Good afternoon and welcome at Business Matters Live. Co-host Sanne, what's the news of the week for you?
I would say two. One is, I was very surprised that the court order yesterday in the Netherlands, but it has also international precedent, I think, that Shell was ordered by a Dutch court to show more ambition and to reduce its emission reductions even faster than it planned already. And it's just historic because it's the first time that citizens actually fight against, in court of law, against a big multinational, and they force that big multinational to even be more ambitious about climate change.
And you work for the embassy in Poland.
Yeah.
What's the impact here in Poland?
Well, it can have, like the other one, the Urgenda court order, it has in European countries, member states, it has also consequences for other nations, so it's a sort of extraterritorial effect.
Yeah.
This will also for Polish multinationals will have an impact. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but after time it will also have here.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
We need to think of a time.
Sorry, I'm a lawyer, so I could go on forever.
So you had your jab because you had to leave the previous...
right, yes, I had it. So second one is scheduled next week.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
What about you?
Also next week it will be my turn. We need to do something else because previous edition you weren't there, but we promised the viewers, everybody who liked us on YouTube, we would give away a bottle to one of the people that liked us on YouTube. Yes. So out of the ones that liked us, we have now two. Yes.
Okay.
I cannot see who it is. It's two different people. Take them in your hands.
Right.
Yeah. Put them behind your back. Yes. Okay.
So there's a lucky winner, I guess.
There's the lucky winner.
You're not showing the brand?
Right hand.
Whatever you like.
Right hand. Your right hand. And please say who it is.
Oh, can I also
do
the honor? Okay, here it comes. Wim Eising.
Wim Eising.
The lucky winner of this bottle of wine.
We do the same next in this edition. So please like us on YouTube. If we have more than 10 likes, we give away a bottle of wine to a lucky winner. Sanne, thank you very much. Let's go to the first guest.
Let's do this.
So, welcome again at Business Matters Live, the video podcast that signals trends and identifies issues and opportunities for doing business in Poland. Important to remind you is that you as a viewer can also ask your questions to our guests, put them in the chat and they will be discussed with us here at the desk. The main topic of today is the Polish deal. This is a plan of the Polish government that has been in the making for many, many months, and that should help to get the economy back on its legs after COVID-19. It's also a pledge for some far-reaching changes in taxes, more investments in health and in social infrastructure. The impact could be huge, and therefore we want to discuss that and clarify the impact here today at Business Matters Live. We talk about this subject with Paweł Panci, Strategy and Business Development Director of ABSL, the Association of Business Service Leasers. Later in the broadcasting we also talk to Caroline Baraukjewicz-Sokal, partner of Von Zandhier and Schultz, who gives us some practical legal rules of thumbs for working remotely. But we first start with Piotr Bjelski, Director of the Economic Analysis Department at Santander Bank Polska. He is an award-winning forecaster of the Santander Bank, which is currently the number 3 bank in Poland. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and we want to uphold the tradition with our first guest to first start with 3 questions on which you can only answer yes and no. On the Polish deal. The Polish deal is going to be a game changer that diminishes the gap between the poor and the rich in Poland. Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Yes, okay. A yes with a big sigh, yes? But maybe we come to discuss on that later. Yes. It's not clear yet how the Polish deal should be financed. However, I expect that the bill for the measures is going to be paid by the future governments.
No.
No. The plan is lacking any new big investments. By focusing mainly on smaller ones, the government is showing a lack of ambition to make real changes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. That's 2 times a yes, 1 time a no. Like always, interesting answers. Let's see if we have time to discuss that later on. But first, let's start with the investments. The cost of the plan is 651 billion zlotys. Critics say that there's no funding and that the Polish deal is lacking any ambitious, large plans. What can you say about that?
First of all, in terms of this investment part, I think that first, some of those projects that were mentioned in the plan, maybe some of them are ambitious, like, for example, creating this super airport hub in Poland, creating big railway network, fast rails across Poland. Those are maybe ambitious. Another question is, are they really necessary and needed, especially in post-pandemic world, when the travel can be completely different than before pandemic? But first of all, this is not new. I mean, those are ideas that were raised or proposed some time ago, even several years ago. Part of those ideas will be probably a repeat of what has been already planned in other documents, like, for example, in Polish Development Plan. So I don't really see a big value added on top of what have already been discussed or presented in the past, and large part of it is probably the use of European money, which is good, which is needed, but also in this case, it is not something new on top of what we could have expected before.
Okay. So you're lacking new ideas, but the 651 billion zlotys, that's a huge amount of money, which should help the economy back on its legs.
Yeah, sure, but then Polish economy needs investments. But this is the problem. I mean, this government, it's difficult to criticize that when someone says we want the economy to grow, we want investment to grow. But it's not enough for make it happen. I mean, this government has been repeating that it wants investments to bloom since the beginning, since they came to power in 2015. The problem is that investment rate in Poland since then has been in decline, and that's not really materialized. So it's one thing to say we want investments to grow, another thing is to make it happen. So that's probably, again, the same situation here.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's discuss it piece by piece, like the topics that you mentioned. One of the items that's in the plan is the PIT. So it means that people who are at the retirement age, they can continue to work and don't have to pay PIT. Yes, that's the PIT tax. Yes.
Yeah.
So
what's the PIT tax? You may have to explain that.
Well, we have here a specialist.
Personal income tax, which is the tax, the direct tax from your salary that you pay to the budget.
Right. Yeah. And that money is lacking from the budget. So if you are working longer, you don't pay that PIT tax, which is basically a lack for the government to get that money.
True, but it is a proposal for those people who otherwise would go and retire. So if they did retire, they wouldn't pay any PIT at all, and on top of that, you would have to pay them pension, some social contribution, social benefit. So net for the budget, that's change. If it manages to encourage people, to incentivize people to remain on the labor market and keep working instead of retiring, that would be net beneficial, and I think for the public finances, not negative. Besides, it will be also beneficial for economic growth because it will potentially increase the labor force, which is one of Poland's biggest challenges because the economy is aging quickly. And probably one of the biggest challenges for future is the labor shortage, which we already had experienced just before the pandemic.
Yeah. But please clarify this. Yes. So you're 65 years old. 60. What's the retirement age at the moment? Depending on which working group you're in. Yes.
Depending if you are a man or a woman.
Man or
right?
woman as well. Okay.
Yeah.
But when you are at the retirement age, you can continue to work. But for all those years that you paid social benefits. You expect that you get something back at the moment that you retire, but you say that in the rules, in the making, is actually that your retirement age, the moment that you get this social benefits, is going to be later.
Yeah, I mean the idea, as I understood it, because we don't have specific bill yet, but as I understood it, is the idea is that. If you decide to continue working and not retire immediately after reaching retirement age, you just have your tax, personal income tax reduced to 0. But probably you will still have to pay social security contributions like healthcare, pension contribution. So you will still probably have to pay something to the budget, but not personal income tax. But the payment of your pension will be delayed. And as I said, net, it should be good for the budget, not negative for the budget.
Okay, you say it's not a problem for the budget, but the question is, of course, if the people will accept this, yes?
Of course.
Mean, if I would pay many years social benefits and I'm not getting that back at the moment I should retire, then I think that not everybody likes this.
That's true. To be honest, this proposal is a kind of admit of the government that they did not move in the right direction at the beginning of their term of office when they have reduced retirement age in Poland. Because in Poland, the retirement age has been gradually increasing and was supposed to be go up to 67 for men and women. But one of the first decisions of this government was to reduce it, which was not a very clever idea, which was against demographic trends. And this is actually not straightforward, but admitting that, well, it was not a good idea to do it.
Yeah.
And we are now trying to encourage people not to use the right to go and retire.
It's actually countermeasures to repair what has been done in the past, yes? One more question, yes? Can you also maybe tell something positive about the tax impact? I mean, what is the broader impact of all the tax measures?
Of all the tax measures, or the positive? Well, in general, what will be a positive effect of all those tax changes is probably going to be a reduction of inequalities, because in Poland we did have quite the tax burden for the lower earning population was relatively high as compared to the tax burden for those earning most. And those changes are slightly changing those balances in favor for the lower end of the income distribution, which may be good and reduce inequalities in future.
Mm-hmm. And it would, I think, also boost consumption and also create a middle class in Poland, which is relatively small, at least in the view of Mr. Morawiecki. Besides, I mean, the boosting of consumption by these measures, and you mentioned CPK as an infrastructural investment. Are there any other structural investments in the economy foreseen in the New Deal for Poland? So reforms or actual structural investments?
Actually, that's what I think is the kind of disadvantage of this plan, is that there are not so many answers to big challenges for Poland. And the plan actually puts lots of emphasis on these tax changes. And the other areas are, much less clear, much less specified. So there are some declarations that, we want to improve education, but at the same time, the proposals to improve education are not very precise, and those that are precise, like for example extending history lessons, are not going to address the biggest challenges for Poland. When we want to build well-educated labor force that is good in modern technologies and stuff like that. So that's the problem. And there are some declarations which maybe even, let's say, go in the right direction, but there is lack of details that would be convincing that it will actually happen. Like, as I said, education, healthcare probably is another example. When you have the declaration that we will spend lots of money, which is good, but on the other hand...
From an average of 5% of GDP to 7%, which is the EU average in investments in healthcare. So that is a positive side, I would say.
That's positive. Yeah, but the devil is in the details. So you can spend it clever or not very clever. Yeah. So you never know. I mean, because there is no concrete plan. And at the same time, the big problem of the healthcare system in Poland is not only money. Of course, money is also one of the problems, but people are the problem. And at the same time, this tax reform actually is kind of penalizing well-educated healthcare workers, because most of them earn enough to be penalized by those tax changes. And we already see in the past years, we already see big migration of skilled labor healthcare specialists from Poland abroad. And those changes are really difficult to argue that they will stop this trend, right?
And so basically the whole idea in Poland should be increased production, yes? Productivity, sorry. So increased productivity. That's where Poland should go, yes?
Definitely.
And is that also where this plan brings us?
I don't think if this plan does very much about it. What this plan does, I would say, is it somehow conserves the current Poland's growth model, which is basically a successful manufacturing hub based on cheap labor force. Mm-hmm. And this plan actually would kind of conserve this model, because it gives money to the, as I said, lower end of income distribution. It allows, for example, may allow companies to. It may reduce somehow wage pressure in this lower income group, because if employees will get some tax relief, they are less likely to go and ask for another tax rise. So it will reduce the tax, the wage pressure in the lower end of the income distribution. It will punish somehow higher earning specialists, which is kind of a problem, because if you want to move to modern economy, we should not penalize too much those IT experts, engineers, doctors, and so on. So in this respect, this plan is not really addressing those modern challenges. Yeah. But it will be good for Poland as a manufacturing hub.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but might the Polish recovery plan, as it was submitted last month to Brussels, to tap into this huge support from the EU Next Gen funding, the recovery fund from the EU. Would that help in making structural investments and reforms? Because I think there you have some very clear country-specific recommendations on the pension age, on the retirement age, for example, also on the rule of law, etc. And there's more sort of a conditionality, milestones, etc. So maybe in that sense, the recovery plan, the KPO, as it is called in Poland, might come in here to compensate a little bit for the structural impact.
For example, one of the areas when we can benefit a lot, and Poland really particularly has lots of, this is especially important for us, is the green transformation. And European Recovery Fund puts lots of emphasis on green transformation, and there are strict KPIs on this area, in this area, which is extremely important for Poland, because we are the country with at least until now, with the most dirty energy mix in Europe. We have to change it, not only because of costs, because the energy costs in Poland will grow very rapidly, so it will undermine cost competitiveness of Polish business. But not only because of that, but also because of awareness, of global awareness of importance of this factor. So, for example, it's not only that manufacturing in Poland will be more expensive, but more and more companies will choose their partners based, for example, on their carbon print. So if we produce something with big carbon print, we will be, a second or third choice for counterparties. So this is important.
Is there anything in the New Deal on the reform of the energy sector, or is there nothing on?
I haven't found too much, and this is probably one of the problems, that this is the area which is kind of omitted there.
Right. Right. Then one final question, if I may. He's a timekeeper, so I should...
I'm watching the clock.
Okay, good. No, I mean, promises, handouts, strengthening the, let's say, lower class or lower income groups. That also does something maybe with inflation. Because the inflation was already quite high in April, 4.3%, the highest in Europe. So what will this do with inflation? Is that maybe a reason for concern?
Yeah, I mean, on margin, it will increase the inflationary pressure. As you said, we already have high inflation. Polish economy, also for other reasons, is probably going to be among the quickest recovering from the post-pandemic shock. On top of that, you have those changes which are pro-consumption, which will boost consumption. The impact probably, it's not this Polish deal is not a very big deal. I mean, the impact on the economy will not be dramatic. I would expect that it will add to GDP growth, let's say, 0.3 percentage points. So it's not a huge deal, right? But on margin, it would add something to inflationary pressure. So when you already have some concerns about inflation going too high, that will add something on top of it, and will or may accelerate the moment when we will have to start increasing interest rates.
Understand. Okay, so we have to look at the time, keep the time. So maybe in the dressing room there's some time for more discussion.
Well, we do this for the viewers.
We do it for okay. But we have to keep the time as well, Sanne. Yeah? So we're gonna do a little bit reshuffle here at the table, and then we see you back in a few moments. So, also at the table we have Paweł Panci, Strategy and Business Development Director of ABSL, the Association of Business Service Leasers. We have asked you to come to this table to talk as well about the Polish deal. But first something about your sector, because maybe not everybody knows where the organization stands for and what business process outsourcing companies are doing. You represent companies such as AstraZeneca, IKEA, but more importantly also Philips, Grupa Żywiec, Heineken. And these companies offer work to around 350,000 Polish people here in Poland, right?
Yes, that's correct. Business services sector is probably one of the fastest growing parts of the Polish economy. It's also important because it has been created in Poland only in the last 20 years. So only in 20 years, 350,000 jobs was created and about 1,700 companies were introduced in Poland. When thinking about this, as well as the change that took place in the old days when we were simply working with the invoices and doing simple jobs called back office. Yeah. Now we are moving towards middle office and front office, where the qualities of the people are the main reason why these companies are coming here. So yes, maybe in the production it is cheap labor. In business services sector, it's the quality of people. So we always sell Poland saying it's a country of large number of well-educated young people speaking foreign languages. And that's probably the best description of the sector.
Right. And for the understanding of people who are not familiar with your business, how you're handling the administration of foreign companies of different countries.
Finance, accounting, HR, IT, procurement, all not core activities of the companies. Yeah. So I always say if Shell is famous or was famous because of the gas, they had to issue the invoices, they had to work on the IT tools, they had to work on employing the people, and that was slowing them down. When they outsourced it to or asked a specific legal unit to provide it for them, they can concentrate on what they do best.
Right. You're here to talk about the Polish deal.
Yes.
You're not happy with that for your sector. Why is that?
There are elements of the Polish deal that introduce the concern, because on one hand we hear from the Polish Prime Minister that yes, you're welcome in Poland, please create those jobs, we want R&D in Poland. And on the other, he hits unexpectedly, because that's one of the biggest challenges. We could hear about it, but we were not warned that it will happen. Yeah. So the lack of transparency of introducing the new regulations is the biggest challenge for the companies. Because if we, maybe before the COVID and now trying to think in terms of 3 to 5 years, we cannot be sure what may happen. And the biggest challenge is that we have about 87% of the people are working on regular contracts. So this is somehow regulated. But the most attractive part, which is IT, R&D, all those things that Prime Minister Morawiecki would like to bring and invite to Poland, is working usually on B2B, because these people are not cheating because it's better for them, they pay less taxes, because they work as freelancers, sharing their time between 2, 3, 4 or 5 companies, offering similar activities. So they earn more money, they pay more taxes, they spend more money in Poland, and now comes the blow, unexpectedly, you will be taxed on something. While the average age is 31, so this is the time when you start your family, think about raising the kids. When you get that blow, you think, maybe it's not the right place for me. So on one hand, I hear Prime Minister Morawiecki says, please come to Poland, start your family. We want you to have more children. On the other, I'm not sure if consciously or not, he introduces the regulations that are against what he says. Yeah. So this is where we're trying to, we're not waving the flag and hysterically panicking and saying this is bad. We're trying to show
it's actually the same thing as we discussed with Piotr Bjelski a few moments ago. Is that Poland wants to increase productivity, produce more with less people, even in services, and it's those people that are being taxed extra.
Exactly. This is, in our case, we have calculated that if the regulations are being introduced, it will reach up to 57% of our employees. So it's about 200,000 people. Okay. The young, well-educated, skilled, just entering that upper part of their wages, thinking about houses, thinking about buying things. Yeah. And now there is a red flag to them saying you'll have to pay for that extra. Yeah.
You're not here only because of your industry, of course, because this measure has an implication on many companies.
I'm glad that it was brought up here. We all have expected a huge sacrifice from the medical sector. They have been working 27 hours a day. And they have reached a certain level when they thought, okay, we are now justly remunerated. And now, if they have to pay the taxes, they will balance on that level of, is it enough, or should I be looking for a place that really appreciates me?
Yeah, and it means that the people that are earning more in the healthcare industry, they are taxed progressively because of that higher part that they have.
Of course, with the doctors, and why they were able to reach more financially is that they were working in the hospital, but they were also able to have their own B2B business, starting private careers. Now, when the basic part is not remunerating them well, but they were able to get more from private practice, which is more expensive but available. The biggest challenge with medical system is in Poland, in order, if you want to be cured, sometimes you have to pay for it, like in most of the economies. And now they are being taxed extra for what they do extra.
What can you say about the people that are under B2B, the so-called B2B contracts, and are paying, need to pay how many percent? 6 or 8% ZUS?
Right now,
9%.
Yes, but the biggest injustice that comes with this is not the regulation itself, but it's the whole narration. Prime Minister says, we are going to be just, we will cut down all those people that cheat on us, because he thinks that everyone is exchanging the regular contract for B2B and doing it for the same employer. No, these people can work anywhere, and they actually do. They may be working until, 6 o'clock p.m. in Poland, and then after 6 o'clock they may be providing services for US. Yeah. And they want to do it here because they have families, but if they are taxed extra, they were already thinking about when we were trying to, or the government was trying to play with the lifting the cap of the social insurance taxes. 2017, we have the 30 times average. Now they said we're going to remove it, so we're going to pay taxes on everything. So these people were saying then in 2017, we will move to the Czech Republic. Yeah. Now, when they had the whole year of working with the US, they will not move to the Czech Republic. They will register their companies in the US. They will be flying there every 3 months, and there may come a day that they will stay there. Yeah. So is that, Prime Minister Morawiecki, what you want?
Right. Is there any way that that we can see any positive views on this?
Well, we are thinking something that's introduced very politically and very populistically. He says we're going to balance the level of wages. Yeah. But if anyone wanted to get more, there are courses, there is upskilling and reskilling. They can earn more. We are just against taxing those that work hard and giving it to those that, okay, maybe didn't have that chance to educate themselves, but they are from a different group, and there always will be different groups. Okay, we want to level it up, but not unexpectedly. So what we propose is instead of raising it 7 percentage points, let's do it 3.85. Yeah. And that will be easier for us to swallow. That will give the budget some extra cash. But that will not polarize the society, because that's what the government is doing. Yeah. He is speaking to one part saying, we will be more just for you, because we will hit them on the head. It's not like that. Yeah. I mean, those that are hit on the head too many times will go away. Okay, so then the government will stay with those that vote for him, but they will not be creating that economy that the government is looking for.
Yeah, and what I also hear from you is that you say we would like to be part of the discussion when the laws are being created, yes? So, Pavel, that's all we have time for at the moment. Thank you very much for joining the program Business Matters Live today. And now we're going to listen to the column of Sanne Kaasjager.
Thank you very much.
Poland is opening up. And so are we. The Polish economy is recovering quite strongly. It's also on the verge of another historic transition. And Poland knows all too well how complex, painful and rewarding a transformation can be. In my last contribution in March, I gave you a sneak preview of the economic recovery plan for Poland, the so-called KPO. And the New Deal for Poland, which was renamed Polish Deal after consulting some historians. The media has extensively reported on both, so I won't dwell on it too much, but let me just show you this graph, which basically summarizes the draft plan as it was submitted to Brussels. As you see, a total investment of 36 billion euros, of which 12 billion in loans, to be spent on energy transition, smart mobility, modernizing health, digitalization, and increasing economic resilience. In 3 months, the draft will be assessed, adjusted, and approved. First disbursements will take place even this year. So if we add to this the regular cohesion funding allocated for Poland, we're talking about an unprecedented 134 billion euro of investment coming to Poland within the next 6 years. That is an amount that equals 25% of Poland's annual GDP. It makes Poland also the #1 recipient among the 11 Central and Eastern European member states, as you can see in this table. Ironically, the popularity of the EU in Poland is declining faster than anywhere else in Europe. And nowhere in Europe do these funding flows, how they should be raised and spent, give rise to such an intense political fight. This political complexity was demonstrated last month. We saw the PiS government almost crash and burn over their internal disagreement whether or not to allow the European Commission to borrow money on the capital market. Today, In fact, as we speak, opposition and government parties are clashing head-on in the Polish Senate over the same topic, mixed up with the debate over the Polish recovery plan. This political stalemate risks to delay the mobilization of funds for the entire EU. So, to put it diplomatically, capitals, including mine, all over Europe, are a bit concerned about the situation. Talking about diplomacy, in these turbulent times, the embassy tries to engage with ministry officials, with analysts, with politicians, academics, journalists. And our goal is to understand, to explain, and of course to convince. In the past 2 months, the ambassador and I, sometimes joined by our Benelux colleagues, met with Minister of Finance Kościński, with Vice Prime Minister Gowin, with the major Polish funds, with employers' organization Leviathan, and many others. We discussed the economic recovery plan, of course, but we also voiced the concerns that some of you have. For example, about the challenges in the Polish business environment or the rule of law situation. We made the case that Poland needs foreign investors, like the Netherlands, and argued that national economic patriotism we sometimes see is not in the interest of Poland nor of the Netherlands. And interestingly, Minister Gowin said he wanted to move away from national economic patriotism towards European economic patriotism. From production capacity in Asia towards more production capacity in Europe. And in this direction, Poland will develop a new industrial policy to be presented later this year. To collect your experiences and input for meetings like these, we engage also with you, entrepreneurs. In June, we'll co-host with the NPCC a roundtable with CEOs of Dutch multinationals. And we'll organize a working lunch with the NPCC. In terms of involving you, let me mention a couple more of our planned activities, and I hope that there's something in it for you as well. First, offshore wind energy. We are rolling out a series of activities as a follow-up to the digital trade mission last year, an updated market survey, expert roundtables, visits to and from Poland of key stakeholders. Our aim is to build a consortium of Dutch companies, and a business case, of course. We hope to launch a so-called Partners for International Business program next year. This is a program to which both public and private parties will need to commit to actually come down to business. From 21st to 23rd of June, we are organizing a virtual matchmaking mission to Poland in the field of smart water solutions for cities and rural areas. We will present our new market survey on water retention, a solution that addresses the consequences of climate change, such as drought and flood risk. This recent map shows where Poland is threatened by drought. Orange is strong, red is extreme threat. So, let's call the Dutch. Do dzieła. We're also preparing for a mini-conference with the Polish Circular Hotspot on plastics and material flows in cities. This is scheduled for the end of June. Dutch State Secretary Stientje van Veldhoven, responsible for circular economy, will be meeting her Polish counterpart and lead the conference debate. We're still looking for companies to sign her European Plastics Pact. So please come forward if you want to. Finally, the Embassy is one of the main sponsors of the Rail Freight Summit, I discussed it before, which will be held from the 1st to the 2nd of September in Łódź at the occasion of the European Year of Rail. Well, with that, my train of events has reached its destination. Back to you, Elro.
Welcome back at the table of the Business Matters Live, the video podcast that signals trends and identifies issues and opportunities for doing business in Poland. Please come up with your questions. I have here the tablet, and your questions that you put in the comments will be answered here at the table. So please join in with that as well. Our next guest is Karolina Barałkiewicz-Sokal, partner of Van Zandhier & Schultz. Thank you very much for joining us from Poznan today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes.
Nice to see you here.
We have invited you in our Knowledge Circle HR last week, and you had some very good and practical tips regarding the regulations. First of all, the Ministry of Labour is currently working on a new remote work plan, yes? Can you tell us something about that?
Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting point, because we used to have some kind of telework before, and then pandemic came and everything changed because it was not useful anymore. So we decided, or our government decided, to allow people working far away from office, home office, if the employer says them to do it, but there were no regulations. So we just did a practice on our experiences, on trials and so on. And of course, they were working on a draft of new regulations started in March 2020, but we are still ongoing with works because there's no good communication between trade unions, employers and our government. But now we have a draft of a regulation, and probably we will also have a regulation till the end of the third quarter of this year. Okay. So it seems to be optimistic now.
Okay, it's good that something is in the pipeline. Yes, can you give us a sneak preview? What are the highlights?
The most important point is when it is possible to work from home after the pandemic time will finish. And there is a proposal that we will have a possibility of 12 days in a year where you can just work from home without any super extra agreement with your employer and employee. So you can write it down in an employment contract and then you can use it. And the other point, what is very important for all employers and employees, are costs of remote working. Because now there is no regulation what about electricity, internet, water, gas and whatever what you use at home. Coffee, good point. And now there will be a possibility to pay an amount of money for equal this expenses. So it's pretty optimistic, and I hope they will find some agreement on it, and the new regulations will be at the end of the year.
Okay. So with implementation, it also takes the time before all the parties have given their opinion. You say end of the year is a reasonable term.
I see it as optimistic, and they also write those regulations should be working after the pandemic time will finish, but it will give some basis for decisions for employers just to make a regulation, because people start coming back to the offices now, and we need to regulate it somehow, because we got used to work from home, and a lot of us want to stay at home and work from home, so we have to find some solution. And when you have regulation, it's much easier to tell people to do something in a company. Okay,
understand. When we had that presentation from you in our Knowledge Circle HR, how you had a presentation on several topics, on 4 topics. Maybe one by one we can go over them, because you had some very practical advice.
Okay.
Yeah?
I've chosen 4 most common ones during last year.
The first one is health and safety.
Health and safety, yes. How to train people, how important is it to train people. We told it is possible to train people online, and we also recommend to do it, just to be sure when something happened we have people trained. And we also talk a little bit about work accidents. If something happens at home, when it is a work accident, when not, how to prove it, how to make investigation, whether the employee is allowed to let the commission into his private house or not. And it's a very important topic, not good regulated. We just gave some tips just to be...
But we would like to be very, very practical here, as practical as possible.
Just teach people and train people as much as possible. Not all the time, of course, but tell them, be careful, take care of security, use a good chair, use good desk, don't leave your house for private purposes during your working time. That's practical ideas for
But why not? Because there's a reason for that.
Because if something happens when you go to private purpose, it's not a work accident. It's your private accident, so you don't get 100% of salary, but just 80% of the salary.
Because that would be my question. If you work at home, then your employer is responsible for if there's an accident or you twist your ankle because you got a gap.
But you need an extra connection between the accident and work. So when you, for example, when you boil water, during a teleconference and you put on a hand, it can be a work accident. But when you make an extra break to make your laundry, for example, and wash machine falls on you, it will not be a work accident because it's not directly connected with your work. So it's really...
This is food for lawyers, I think.
Yes, it is food for lawyers and for security specialists.
Yeah, okay. And computers, when I pour a cup of coffee over my computer during working at home?
It's a work accident and you destroy probably your employer things, so you may be also liable for it as an employee.
Okay.
If you do it on purpose, not accidentally.
No, but accidentally. But is there a different? Is it a different legal situation when it happens at home than when it happens at work?
Actually, not. When you work at home, there's no difference.
Okay.
No.
Another topic that you mentioned is overtime and the right to be offline.
Yes. There are two big topics, because when you work from home, the border between private and work is very narrow and it's very easy to go over it. So for all team leaders actually in big companies, it's a big task to be aware of overtimes, to think that overtimes are only for special employers' needs. So check whether your people answer your emails after working hours just because they answer them, or whether they answer it because it's your special need. So just train your people to be offline. That they have right to be offline. They can quit after.
Offline.
Yes.
This is the first time I heard that
Yes.
term. But it's you have that right.
Yes, of
So
course.
you can say no, I'm not picking up the phone, or I'm not answering this email.
Yes, you have 8 hours working time usually, or 40 hours a week, and everything what's over it, it's actually overtimes. So actually you have your right to be offline, but many people forget it.
How do you do that then?
Yes.
I mean, you're expecting of your staff
To work until midnight.
Yes,
until midnight.
of course. But the problem in Poland is also we have some kind of overtime which is allowed without any special email. So when you are in the office and see your employee working, the court may say, okay, you allowed it because you saw him at the office. And even if you didn't give him an ask to stay, he stayed. So it's easier when you work online at the office because it's offline at the office. But when you work online, you are still not sure whether he's in his 8th hour of work or 7th or 9th. So we recommend to make a good hour lists of working time of people and checking whether they do overtimes or no, and let people be offline after they made their tasks.
Right. Because some people continue to work,
Yes.
Even if they are over the 8 hours work. Yes.
Yes, even because they have such a character, for example, or they think, okay, I'm at home, I don't have to travel from the office to my home, so I finish this task to start new in the next morning. So just be aware of it as a team leader.
Because I think seriously, this is really important. I think because you see the blurring of work and private when you work from home. I could even go a step further and say maybe you have a duty to be offline.
Yes.
That
just turn off the server. For example.
But that's something between manager and employer and employee. I think.
Well, is this also arranged in this new law? Those items?
No, I haven't seen this point about overtimes or being offline, so it will be praxis probably.
Yeah. Okay, you have to arrange this. This is a lot of things to arrange with for employers.
Yes, a lot to arrange, a lot of praxis, but there is also a lot of points which are written in a labor code, so you have to check it and really follow it.
Okay. There were 2 more things that you also mentioned. The cost for the employee associated with remote working.
Yes, it's a big problem now because people use their own electricity, water, coffee, as you said, and so on. And there is no possibility to pay it to them without taxes and social security amounts. So the new draft will change it. They will send some special amount just to cover those costs. And now our clients, for example, usually pay some amount and pay taxes and social security on it just to equal those costs. There were also big discussions about table, chair from the office, whether the employer is obliged to provide it. There is no obligation, but you have to provide a safe working place. So when the employee said, I would like to have my chair at home, we just let them take it. So they took a taxi, for example.
Okay, but that's your example, yes? But there are other companies who do it differently.
Some people tell them to buy one, for example, and take an invoice for a company, invoice paid for it, and it will probably have to be taken to the office after the online working will finish. Yeah. There are solutions. Some people decided to leave a part of employees at the office, a part on home office, so they gave them some tools to work. Computer, printer, scanner are just ordinary obligation of the employer, but chair and desk is not so, obviously, but a lot of people
so
just...
printer is obliged.
If you have to print, your employer has to give you a printer. If you don't have to print, you don't get it from
Okay, it's that simple, right? It's that simple.
It's really a negotiation between
because you can also write everything at home, send this to your office, for example. The secretary is in the office, she prints everything and you send it to you, sign. It's also a possibility.
Because companies are in the woods, yes? I mean, they have no idea exactly what to do, especially the smaller and medium-sized companies, I guess.
Yes. For example, I don't have a printer and I print a lot. So during the home office, I usually prepared everything what I need to print, and then I went to the office once a week, for example, and took everything what has to be sent.
Okay.
Yes.
Last point you mentioned is confidentiality.
Yes, it's a very important point, because during office, we usually had closed doors, orders with documents and so on, and then from one day to another, you took all documents, also secret documents, to your home and you work with them. So we make a proposal for our clients to make an extra training again for data security, document security and data protection, just to make people aware to work at home alone in a room, or maybe not with 5 other people, to make calls in a discreetly way, not to work from public places, and just to keep business secret as possible, and inform, and don't be afraid to inform when something happens. So when you lose some important document, just go to your team leader, to your boss, and tell, this happened, how can we deal with it?
You say regulate that, yes?
Yes.
Make a set of rules with your employees, how to do this?
We did a lot of rules. Just short information, not big regulation or order, because nobody reads it.
Code of conduct. Like
yes, just short with points. Take care of better, for example. Yep. Just to make people aware to think about such important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think that RODO used to be a big topic before COVID, but now RODO seems not so important anymore, while there are many more reasons why it should be of a big concern.
Yes, it should be, and people should remember what they've learned in 2018 when we implemented RODO. And they just should not keep thinking about data security, because when you lose it somehow, somewhere, when you leave an important document in a restaurant where you work, on a library, your employer can have a big problem.
Of course.
So just make people be aware to tell it to the employer.
Yeah. Many questions from companies coming to your law firm on this topic?
Yes, especially at the beginning in March 2020, because everything started and nobody knew what to do. And now there's a lot of question how to regulate coming back. Yeah. And it's of course it's a legal problem, but I think it's more psychological and sociological problem, and they need to talk to people and find a kind of mediation. And I think will not come back to the kind of work which was before COVID. I think we will still stay in some part in home office.
Thank you very much. That's all that we have time for today. And thank you for watching the 4th edition of Business Matters Live. Before we finish this edition, I want to remind you of what is upcoming. Go to our website where you can find all the events and updates also concerning our Knowledge Circle meetings. Furthermore, we're currently preparing our annual Orange Ball for 25th of September. Go to our website to book our tables and sponsorships. That's all we have time for today. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube page. We're going to raffle again a bottle of good wine, just like we did today with Sanne. Furthermore, don't forget to tune in at our next Business Matters Live, the first one after the summer, on the 30th of September, with more interesting guests. Thank you for watching and have a nice afternoon. Thank you very much. Bye.